Good afternoon, everybody. Eddie Webb. We are here at the new Media Lab at Mesa Community College, and my co-host, Ton Hypley, Dr. Hypley.
Dr. Hypley. Thank you, Dr. Webb. And I am excited to be here as always. I love being here and learning new things.
So we have a very special guest today, our very own Associate Dean of Student Affairs, Kathleen Perales.
Woo!
Hey, welcome.
Thank
welcome
you.
to the show. And I'm really grateful I'm here. I want to put a little context in here. I've known Kathleen for how many years have you worked here? 20 years? Or
25
more?
this year.
So I think I've known you all of those 25 years and watched you grow as a person and a professional and hang in there in our campus in different roles. And I've had the honor of educating two of your daughters, your beautiful daughters, who I just think the world of both of them. So gifted and kind and smart and all the good stuff. We've been talking about doing a podcast around, what does a dean of student affairs? What is the role? How do you keep the peace, and all of that stuff? And this past semester, I had a class that was getting kind of weird. They were getting a little divided and this sort of stuff. And I asked Dean Perales to come in, and she did a phenomenal job of restarting this class for me. And right, Keegan? We had an excellent class from then on out. Like, everybody fell in line. Like, you can't just show up with your, late all the time and have your own personal attitudes. And like, we had to get our learning community healthy again. She came in here and did that. So very grateful to you for that. Our first question. Can you tell us about your journey into higher education? What led you to become the Dean of Student Affairs?
So I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. I'm a first-generation college student. And my mom, who's my role model and the person who I aspire to be like every day, was a person who was highly involved in youth employment and youth education. And so her whole life was centered around workforce and youth development. But there wasn't always a lot of conversation around college. I think in her mind, the end result was making sure that I graduated high school so that I could get a job. And so for me, my high school years were probably spent more socializing than anything. I remember in high school, we had a senior graduation list, and my name would be on it, then off it, then on it, then off it, to the point where I wasn't really quite sure what was going to happen. But somehow I managed to graduate high school. And I had an aunt who worked at Pima College, and I remember her, my Thea Joyce. She came into my room one day, really asking me, like, what are your plans? Like, what are you going to do? Because you got to do something. You can't just not do anything. And she happened to be an enrollment counselor over at Pima Community College. And I would say that was the beginning of my higher ed journey, because she threw me a lifeboat in the form of a summer bridge program. And she basically said, you need to go do the Pima College Summer Bridge program. I'm going to enroll you, and let's get you going. And in doing so, it created space for me to really get a head start on my college education in an environment that was welcoming, that didn't really, believe that my past experience was a predictor of my future. I had a second chance, if you will. They were caring individuals. And at that point, I quickly realized that this program created an opportunity for me that I wish or should have had all through high school. I was pissed off because here I was, in high school. I was on whatever perceived track the high school counselors had of me, and now I'm flourishing. And then there was an opportunity for me to be a student recruiter for Pima College. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this because I feel like everybody should have an opportunity to go to college. Everybody should have an opportunity to know that they can be successful regardless of how high school is going for them. So I started my career in higher education being kind of mad at my high school counselors for a very long time. And then from there, I transferred to the University of Arizona my second year. I continued to grow academically. I made the dean's list several semesters in a row, and I continued to work in outreach. And there were 2 summer programs that I worked for through the College of Agriculture And I'll never forget that my junior year, I was supposed to go out to the high schools and recruit. And I got to go back to my high school and essentially show off a little bit in terms of my success, but also to say out loud in front of some people that were still there, why students can be successful regardless of where they think they might be at that current time. That if you have the desire, if you have the attitude, we can work on the aptitude. We can work on getting you prepared. But if that's what you want, you can do it. So for me, access to higher education was a game changer. And when I graduated, my first job was with Central Arizona College. And it was during that time when I saw I like to call it the agency and the ability to empower through programming, through services, through financial resources that deans had. And for me, being a dean is the sweet spot. It's a place where you can have the creativity and the autonomy you need to be responsive to the students, to the community, while at the same time having an understanding and access to resources and still being so close in touch with the students that you don't get bogged down in some of what I call the politics of the higher level administrators. So I get to spend my time working with staff that are just as dedicated as I am, in a space where I can connect and see the impact of students, and then also be able to remove boundaries because I have access to resources and understanding about, how the college operates. And so that is what led me to becoming a dean of students. I love it. I love my job. I've been here for 25 years. I've been an administrator in a dean's role since about 2007, and I've loved it ever since.
I'm so connecting to you. I don't know if you can see my face over here. I'm smiling and I'm nodding because I hear a lot of my story in your story, so it's great. And I think that experience in this particular setting can really guide your interactions with students. And I'm sure you come across a variety of circumstances with students, maybe some super positive, maybe some not so positive. So when you're thinking about students that you meet for the first time, in whatever context, what do they think about you and your job that may or may not be true? What misconceptions do students have?
Well, I think it depends on the context in which we meet. So, for example, when I'm working with some of our summer camps, I think that the younger students definitely see me as an adult in that space, probably somebody with some authority. But they also kind of ignore me too, because even though these are programs that I technically administer, they all have program directors where I can see how they do a much better job in connecting with the students and getting to know them and really nurturing and providing them with the resources that the students need. I'm, by my very nature, an introvert, so it's not easy for me to sort of cross that comfort boundary. And so sometimes it gets perceived as being a little bit maybe standoffish, and that's not my intention. But I do think that once they get to know me and they see what my role is, they understand why I'm there. Where I tend to connect more with though is with parents. And I think part of that is just because of the shared experience. And what's interesting is when I started here, Eddie mentioned having taught my daughters. When I started here, I hadn't had my daughters just yet. And so as I've grown professionally, my daughters have grown. And a lot of the programming and services and initiatives that have been created in my space were a result of an understanding that my girls had access to resources that the community didn't. And so it became something very important to us. And when I say us, I'm talking about my colleagues and the people that I work with, that we create space for all families to have access to education. And it became one of those things where we quickly understood that, growing up for me, a summer camp meant that I was in enrollment recovery. But in today's world, students getting to experience summer camps, it's actually an advantage for them. They're getting ahead. That's a privilege to be able to go to summer camp and be exposed to new programs and opportunities to learn. And so many of our families can't afford that. So when I'm connecting with students, I think they definitely know who I am, but it's probably more the parents that I'm connecting to in those cases. When we would do recruitment and outreach, I think that having students see me more as an advisor, those that were comfortable enough to ask me questions and to allow me that time to nurture them and get them excited about their program of study. Like they saw me as somebody they could trust. If you saw me in the conduct space, well, that's a little different, depending on if they were a student who was filing a complaint or a respondent receiving the complaint. I hope that they would feel that they were in a space where they were going to be treated with respect and where they were going to be treated with a level of transparency to understand the process. But sometimes I have to have hard conversations with students, and it's not always easy for me. It's not always easy for them. I just try to give them as much information as they can in a space that allows them to, at least walk away knowing that that they were served, even though the situation at hand was not the best situation for them to be in to begin with.
I kind of want to circle back a little bit to the conversation or the observation you made about parents. And I know that Dr. Danielle is really interested in getting students here early to build that college-going mentality with our youngest students possible, elementary school, middle school. And so the comment that you just made about getting the parents here was something that was really cycling in my mind, that if we get parents to feel welcomed and excited about this experience, then they're going to be excited about getting their students here if they're feeling welcomed. So I was thinking, how do we get those parents? And I've had the privilege of witnessing you over the years through my role in education and the different camps that you've helped inspire and support and the different ideas I brought, for example, the STEM culture that I brought to you last year. And you're like, okay, how do we make that happen? It was really about bringing young people here on campus. I think your point about getting parents here and getting them excited and feeling welcomed is a huge step toward getting the young children here.
Right. Well, and you don't know what you don't know, right? So if you look at, and I'm not in this space as intimately as I used to be, but if you look at the demographics that we serve, Mesa Public Schools, for example, and you look at the number of students that are first-generation students, you have to think with some logic that they're living in a space where they have family members who may or may not have experienced any college whatsoever. And so they can't advise their children about how to even engage higher education processes, right? It's that hidden curriculum, this whole understanding of, well, once you decide you want to go to college, how do you go to college? And what are some things that you need to prepare for? And when you look at the early college options, this is where I think it becomes sort of the great divider, if you will. If you have a parent who has some college education or who has been able to have the ability to learn and understand it, they're likely going to be those parents that are going to be able to drive their students into programs like dual enrollment, for example. And when students start to get tracked into programs where there is an easier pathway to higher education, I think that's when we start to see that separation and the impact that not having access has on our students. And even if you go backwards from dual enrollment, and this is where having kids growing up with me while I sort of grew up at Mesa and took on additional responsibilities was really helpful, because I learned with my own children that we had to be thinking about dual enrollment in 8th grade, not in 9th grade, not in 10th grade. And in 8th grade, we had to be thinking about what math courses they were going to be taking in high school. Because if they weren't taking high school algebra their freshman year, they were going to be behind the 4-year track for algebra. And the way that at the time families are introduced to high school courses is you have high school counselors are going to the middle schools and they're there with their check sheet and they say you have to take A, B, C, and D. You can choose a couple of options. Well, if you don't know anything about higher education, and you don't understand the academic pathways, and you're not really understanding in terms of why it's important to take, algebra your freshman year, and how dual enrollment can be of service for other math and science courses and even English courses, you miss an opportunity, an integral opportunity to start them off on the right foot right then there freshman year. And they can catch up, but they'll never get the full benefit. So if you're undereducated or you don't have a degree, and you're, doing your best to raise your family, and you're relying on these educational institutions to be able to provide those pathways, to me, it makes it very difficult for the students because I just don't think that they're heavy on the resources. And that's why programs like the embedded advisors that we have here are so important. I mean, that the embedded advisors that we have with Mesa Public Schools is critical. The dual enrollment partnerships that we've created are critical for these students. ACE and Hoop of Learning, which are scholarship programs where students can earn up to 24 credit hours taking college level courses that are part of your general ed requirements, along with co-curricular activities like the programming they just did with Eddie in the multimedia lab. I mean, those things are invaluable, but our parents don't know what they don't know. And so if we're not out there communicating with them and creating these pathways and building that pipeline, then I think we're sort of complicit to the low high school college going rate, because we're here and we can do that. That's an opinion of mine.
Opinions are welcome.
Opinion.
I just love the part of the story is, knowing Kathleen all these years, it's like, oh, well, I went and got a film degree and a doctorate. She's like, yeah, well, I grew 2 human beings in my body and raised it.
No.
Oh, yeah. Humble pie.
No, I have such respect for you, Dr. Webb. And it was kind of funny because we talk about my girls, again, privilege here. Having worked here, I was able to cherry pick the instructors that my girls enrolled in classes with, and Dr. Webb was on that list. And if they were an education major, Ton, you would have been on that list. And the cherry picking comes from knowing you all and your care and concern for the students. We were talking earlier that if at the end of the day, at the heart, if we truly are here to support our students, it comes out in our actions, it comes out in our behaviors, sometimes a little wonky. And I extend a lot of grace for wonkiness when that happens. But these are the folks that I want my children to be around, because I want them to love learning. And if they come to college and they don't love learning when they're done, then I don't think we've done our job. And they do. They love learning.
And it's nice to have support for these spaces, that those of us that are global learners have space, to not feel awkward in this very, I don't know what the word is, the structure of the classroom, like where people can fidget and people can come and learn and draw and, listen at the same time, and have all this creative way of learning. We always appreciate the support. So, what do you think makes our campus here unique in terms of student life from your perspective?
Do you mean like student life because when I hear student life, I think of events and activities or...
The culture of learning. You have a bird's eye view of all the different learning components on campus. And, I'm in the English department. That's basic. Well, and now was in a little bit of the art department. And that was my only experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you get all the different, let's say we were a university, instead of departments, colleges, you see all the different colleges. What do you think is unique about Mesa Community College in that regard?
Well, thank you for that. I think here's what I see from that level. We have some amazing individuals on this campus that truly love their discipline and their scholarship. And every department has individuals that thrive in that space. And I'm proud to say that I can probably name 2, 3, 4, 5 people in every single discipline that I think are just really and truly dedicated to their craft. And I think what makes us unique is that we create space for these individuals to show that enthusiasm and that energy and that passion, if you will, with their students and teaching their students. And I'll come across alumni, at the grocery store who'll be like, oh, I went to MCC. And I got to tell you, I've never heard an alumni say they had a bad experience at MCC. They remember fondly their teachers. They remember fondly maybe some of the departments they worked in, if they were like student workers. And they remember fondly like the different activities that they got engaged in. So I think what makes this unique is that we have people who are part of our students' educational journey that truly believe in the work that they're doing. And I also see that in student affairs. You know, if you take a look at some of our departments like student life and leadership and the amount of hours that they dedicate to creating opportunities for our students to become engaged on campus and to feel connected and to feel included, I think they're so integral to our students' success. When I think about how we all reacted to COVID, I mean, we went from not having too much online to shutting everything down, and in 4 days ramping everything back up. And I understand that there were some areas that were difficult, but my proudest moment in being here was watching us as an institution come together collectively to get through that pandemic, to get through the closing of the college in 4 days, right? We were on spring break, ramping up that following Monday, working together and figuring that out and managing through the different challenges that occurred, and not just at work, but personally. I mean, we had a lot of employees here that were impacted by COVID. We had people here who lost many family members during that time, and it was a huge stress, but yet somehow we managed to pull together and come out of it. And I think that's a tribute to, and maybe that's the uniqueness, what makes us special, is that it's this desire, it's this purpose, it's knowing who we serve. And I also think that Mesa has grit. Like, we have a lot of grit. I like to joke that, you know, if you're an MCC employee and you've been around as long as we have, we're in it to win it. We're digging in. We're not going anywhere. We're going to put up with whatever it is that we think we might be putting up with, because this is our home. This is our place. And I think that makes us special too, because it comes out in how we serve our students and how we, you know, manage the ups and downs in our role, whether you're a faculty member, an administrator, a program coordinator, an academic advisor. These are all things about us and our character that make us unique. We're a tough institution, and I love that. I love that about us.
Are you calling us old because we've been here for 25 years?
A little bit.
Eddie's been here longer. He's old. He's older.
Maybe.
Well, you know, and speaking of that, and we've had our challenges, you know, with leadership. We just went through our HLC, and we saw that in 10 years we had, I don't even want to say out loud how many different presidents and vice presidents. And everyone brings their own unique vision and goal for the institution. So you're probably aware of initiatives that are being put forth. So is there one that you're particularly excited about or proud of that we get to see in the coming years? Is there an initiative that you're like, wow, I'm glad we get to do that?
So I think there's probably 2 areas where I'm excited to see its impact on students. The first I'm directly involved with, and that's the work I do with our behavioral intervention team. And this is a group of individuals that come together to address escalating behaviors that students are exhibiting in the classroom or on campus, events, organizations, and such. And what excites me about the work that we do in the behavioral intervention team is that we are fully engaged in really trying to create opportunities to de-escalate and to work with students before those stresses result in higher levels of challenges for them, whether it's a conduct challenge or a challenge that might be in the classroom, maybe harm to self, harm to others. And so it's having a group of individuals that's dedicated to the safety and security of our students, but also to the campus. And so we've done a lot of work with our behavioral intervention team. We spent the last year sort of retweaking our operations, creating, you know, documentation, operational manuals, trainings, and gone out to the faculty to share the work that we're doing as well, because oftentimes it's the faculty that are dealing with the students in distress. And in this day and age, it could be really challenging and you know, I don't want to say bothersome. Fearful is too hard of a word, but you know, you just don't know anymore with people, right? And when you have someone in your classroom that's exhibiting some behaviors and they're kind of not really demonstrating coping skills and they're just kind of firing off and behaving in ways, it can create for an uncomfortable situation. And having a behavioral intervention team available to faculty and staff for consult and to address these issues, I think is an area that's going to greatly benefit our community. The other area, which I'm not as involved with, but I do think is going to be very exciting for our students, is the case management model that's being moved forward by Dr. Hollins, who's my vice president of student affairs. And I think what excites me about that is it's that holistic approach to being able to assist students as they navigate their educational journey. And so Dr. Hollins, Dr. Voller, and Dr. Perales are all three of them involved in that. And I'm excited to see what comes out with a case management approach because, our students need the support. And I think oftentimes we just make this assumption that by simply showing up on campus, all of life's stresses go away, and they don't. They're here with them all day. And having multiple resources and a management team that can assist them and meet them where the students are at while guiding them to, on that educational journey and complete their program of study is going to make a huge difference, especially in our retention rates as well.
So when you say case management, I go to my K-12 background, and the thought that comes to me is wraparound support services.
Mm-hmm.
Can you expand that for people who might not know what case management means?
Well, I'll full disclosure, not being part of this particular project, I don't want to misspeak, and I would absolutely encourage you to invite Dr. Hollins to a podcast to be able to speak on that.
Good.
But it really is, to your point, it's wraparound services. It's being able to it's being able for the student to have points of contact that are relevant to their educational experience and a holistic approach to support them. So, for example, if you have a student who, let's say, is a DRS student receiving accommodations, they too are likely to have a field of interest. So they're going to have an academic advisor assigned to them as well as a DRS coordinator. And let's say maybe that same student is also receiving military benefits. So now they're coordinating with the Veterans Office. As it stands now, the student is likely going to have to go to 3 different offices, talk with 3 different people who may or may not be connected in a way that's cohesive for the student. So a case management approach should yield an opportunity for those 3 areas of contact to work collaboratively together, to communicate with more ease, and to be able to serve that student with enough information to know that any action or direction they provide that student could impact some of those other areas. So the wraparound service piece becomes a bit more intrusive, for lack of better words, and really connects the students in a way that they know that we're talking to each other as well. But again, that I think how it rolls out at MCC, I would love for Dr. Hollins to have that chance to speak to it because it's work that she's very excited about and looks forward to implementing.
How does student affairs play a supporting role for a student mental health and well-being? I mean, is that place where students go for support?
So we can play a role in multiple ways. The one area that I think has provided that provides tremendous leadership, obviously, is our counseling department. And counseling technically is under the area of academic affairs, but they collaborate across the college. You might be aware that with academics, they have counseling liaisons that are assigned to different academic programs. And so I hope you know who your counseling liaison is.
Nathan Terslinger.
So you have Nathan, yay.
Mm-hmm.
And they do provide a lot of leadership and outreach to our faculty to be accessible and have these conversations with them around, how to manage or when they come across students that might be in distress. What's also nice about counseling is that students can access all of their services. They can receive, information on how to manage their daily stressors. And then when appropriate, they can also receive information on resources and referrals as well. And so they really are probably the premier place, for lack of better words, to be able to send students for those mental health needs. But I think where we can, as an institution, also complement that is by educating ourselves around mental health illness. And I'm super excited to share that Melissa Rajo has become trained as a mental health first aid trainer. And this is a certification program that I completed about 2 years ago. And it's really designed to not provide diagnosis of anyone's mental health, but rather to be aware enough of the different mental illnesses that when a student starts to display characteristics of that, you can recognize it and then have a conversation and refer out so that the student can get support. And I think that's probably one of the most important and most valuable tools faculty can have, especially those who perhaps haven't experienced mental illness personally. I know sometimes we become exposed to it through our own personal, experiences with it. And for me personally, that was how I started learning about mental health illness. So when I see a student who might be perceived as disruptive or who might be, have challenges understanding what the instructor is saying, or perhaps is distracted, my first go-to isn't necessarily going to be, well, this is someone who doesn't want to listen and they're a disciplinary person. My first go-to is, I wonder if there's something going on. Is there a diagnosis that might be resulting in this type of behavior? And if the answer is yes, then how do we then work within the parameters of that behavior so that we can better serve that student while maintaining policy, right? Behaviors still have to be held accountable. There is a conduct policy, but if you can have some understanding, it allows you to kind of think through some solutions more effectively, and then also educate, the folks around us with that. So I would love it if, as a community, we all became mental health first aid trained. I think that's a step in the right direction. And then also just to recognize that, we're all coming from life from different perspectives and different challenges and different experiences. And it might be good today, but tomorrow there might be something else. And so how do we hold grace for our students as well as for each other? Because there's a lot that I think is happening in our community. And it is carrying over. It is carrying over.
Yeah, as you're talking, and sometimes I think people who are in it aren't aware of how deeply they're in it. It's like you're breathing, but you're not aware of your breath. And students can be in such a state, or anyone, but students can be in such a state of feeling overwhelmed or alone or isolated that they don't know any other way to be.
Mhm.
So how, or what advice would you give to students who might be in such a place but not even aware of how they're in that place? How might you give them advice about how to help themselves, if they can help themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I'm in the position to give an advice as much as I might be in a position to at least acknowledge where they're at and then provide some options for them. So in the conduct space, I'm smiling because there's a student that I've been working with last semester, and this particular student came in as a disruption case, and they had displayed some behavior on campus where they were very frustrated, and it came out with some belligerence, some anger, some disrespectful conversations and comments, and to the point where the department that this took place in, they had reached their limit, and rightly so, because the behavior was inappropriate. But as I started to work with the student, one of the things that you get over really fast is being afraid to ask questions. And and that was really what it is. What is going on? Tell me about who you are as a person. What are you experiencing? And through that, I learned quite a bit. I learned about the student life that, in the time that I spoke to this person, the 2 months that passed, she lost a brother and a son. And this particular student was not financially secure at all. And they were receiving services from an outside agency, which for me, I was so grateful to learn, because then that meant that they could access more services, right? So you start to listen and you start to learn. And then you start to be able to have that conversation, that authentic conversation about, why the behavior is a challenge, and how do we help you deal and manage the stresses that you're bringing into this space. And that led into conversations about challenges they felt they were having maybe with their instructor and other options. It takes a long time to do that, but it really doesn't. It was probably like 30 minutes of my time, but it feels like a long time. And so when I have a chance to talk with students and dive a little deeper and take the risk, and even with my own vulnerability, hear things that I don't always want to hear, because it's uncomfortable hearing what other people are going through sometimes. It really is. If you're not experiencing challenges and someone is in front of you letting you know that they don't have food and they don't have housing and they have all these other issues, to be on the receiving end of that, if you're not a trained professional, even the most compassionate, empathetic person has trouble managing that, because you don't know what to do with that information. So if you can get past that vulnerability and just listen and learn, you'll find that you actually do know what to do with that information, because we have services on campus. Then it becomes a referrals to counseling. Then it might become a care referral and working with them. And the other thing I want to add too is we can't forget, we have experts on this campus. Like, I'm looking at Utah, and I remember when I first started doing conduct back in 2019, we had a situation with a disruptive student. And the question was, how does the instructor deal with the disrupted student and tell them to stop? And I went and I spoke to you about it. And you were like clear as day on what needed to happen. Have a conversation with the student. They need to know the behavior is not acceptable. Figure out what's going on and put a stop to it. And then you said something, we teach this in education. And it's always stayed with me. So when you think about the resources on our campus, we have an amazing education department that is teaching future leaders, future teachers, how to deal with classroom management. So if you're struggling with classroom management, you just need to walk over to the education area and talk to any of the instructors there who will teach you and help you with managing that. We have an excellent social work department on our campus. And, you know, if you look at what they're teaching their students and understanding the different situations and challenges that students might have and what are community-based resources and other needs, you've got folks like Shakira Piper, who is so happy to extend a hand. Counseling has liaisons. You have the Center for Teaching and Learning, where they spend a lot of time on curriculum, curriculum development and instructional design. That's what I'm looking for. So nobody on this campus should ever feel like they don't have resources that's in a service role or an instructor role, because we're teaching this to our future leaders, professionals, and we have space to teach each other. So I just think that's amazing. That's another reason why we're so amazing at Mesa.
We're coming to the end of our questions here, and I'm really curious about this last question. In all of this dynamics across the campus, what are the mechanisms that student voices can be heard about, the policies and how they're going to be, treated in all of this process?
There are multiple mechanisms, which in and of itself make it challenging for students. And so, because they're everywhere, nothing is linked together in a cohesive way that makes sense to someone to review it. And usually you don't know what the policy is until you need the policy. So what I focus on with students is the one document that's consistent across the board is the course syllabus. And we stress that in all of our interactions with students in terms of any needs that they might have related to the classroom, right? That's the instructor-student contract that has information in terms of what the expectations are, and there's a policy that's linked on that syllabus as well. Everything is really there on that one document. Beyond that, though, we are working on creating a better web presence on student rights and responsibilities. And that's an area where I think it's confusing. It's confusing for me, and I know what to look for. But, we have services on campus like lactation rooms, and we have about 20 different policies on how to handle a grievance. And so for me, it's like, well, how do we connect the services, whether it's lactation rooms, single-user restrooms, DRS services, and policies in a space that's intuitive as best we can for students. So we're trying to make some changes with the more improved web presence. It's incumbent upon us in student affairs to make sure that we're front of mind at events like New Student Orientation, where we've revamped it and we're spending more time talking about student expectations, resources. Dr. Hollins has gone in and is doing the opening presentation about that as well, really trying to empower students to own their college experience. And then where we can fill in the gaps, we've done some road shows where I partner with college police, our BIT team, counseling, and we go around to the different academic departments and do presentations. We'll be offering that again and just trying to educate everybody in terms of where they can find us and the information. I think a lot of it, though, also is knowing who I am and knowing who we all are, right? So worst case scenario, if you have a situation but you remember me and I'm involved, I can either provide a direct resource or get you to a referral. But we have some work to do on the student side, I think. So hopefully more opportunities to visit classrooms will help with that.
I like it when y'all come to the classroom and make a connection with students. Final thoughts?
I teach a course on special ed, and I have a really good friend who helped me to understand that all behavior is communication. And so listening to you talk about your excitement about the behavior intervention team, is that the BIT, B-I-T?
Yeah.
That if we can learn that behavior is communicating something, and that's communicating something that's important to that student that they might not even be aware of, and not look at it as an attack on us, and I'm talking about behavior that could be challenging or negative, then I think we begin to do what we can and what we should for that communication that is being given to us. So I really like the direction that you're going, this work that you're doing to help us begin to decipher the language of the behavior for the benefit of the student and for the benefit of our classroom as our community and the campus. So I'm pretty excited about that work that you're putting forth.
Thank you.
So we always like to give our guests the final word. What would you like the campus to hear from your office and from you?
Oh my gosh, the final word. Well, I think final words with an S. Student affairs, dean of students, vice president of student affairs. We truly mean it when we say we're here to assist in any way that we can. And we have an open door policy. We encourage anyone to reach out to us if you have any challenges or just want to have a conversation and come and say hi. I mean, people joke about the tower, right? We're in the Kirk Student Center. Gets a little lonely in there sometimes. So if someone wants to come in and say hello, we'll take that as well. But really that we're accessible and we're here to help support you and to support the students. I have this phrase that I can't believe I'm going to say on this blog, but it really does capture sort of how I operate, which is to serve students and to stay out of jail. Serving students is meeting them where they're at. Staying out of jail is following the policy and the regulations and making sure that we keep us all safe. And so I think that if we can do that and then add in what you were referring to, Ton, is not take it so personally. I mean, it feels so personal. It really does. I get it. But it's really not. You're there. I'm there in that moment of time, experiencing what they have going on in their life at that second. And that's it. That's it. That's what it is. So if we can take that personal attack or feeling or whatever out of it and just be a little bit vulnerable and listen or get away from, whatever we think authority and agency we have, I'm the boss. And I think I probably only learned that because I had kids. I mean, nothing will test your true agency than a teenage daughter. And you learn to figure out, okay, what do I need to focus on? So my girls are great, but I grew up a lot with those girls. And so hopefully you guys are seeing the benefits of some of that maturity as I've grown up here at MCC.
Thank you very much. We're so happy to have you here. We want to thank Associate Dean Kathleen Perales for joining our show today. In my dad's language, they say, hawa, hawa, honton, gale ahiliga, donadako ha'i. Hawa, take care of each other out there. We are all we have. Thank you.